Have you ever made a mistake so small, yet so catastrophic that you knew your life was over the second it happened? For Clara, it wasn't a car crash or a crime. It was answering a phone call. She was just a server at an exclusive New York gala, invisible, silent, temporary. But when a burner phone rang on the VIP table, she didn't just answer it. She answered in a rare, specific Sicilian dialect that only a handful of families in the world are supposed to know. The room went dead silent. The man at the head of the table, Dante Moretti, the most feared, biting shark in the city's underworld, didn't look angry. He looked fascinated. And as Clara turned to run, he gave an order that sealed her fate. "Don't let her leave." This is the story of how a simple translation turned into a dangerous obsession. You won't believe who she really is. The tray in Clara Sterling's hands didn't tremble, even though her legs felt like jelly. The Red Room at the Obsidian, a private members-only club in downtown Manhattan, was thicker with smoke and tension than any place she had ever been. Clara was 24, struggling to pay off her late father's gambling debts and working for a temp agency that specialized in high-discretion events. Tonight, discretion meant ignoring the gun bulges under the Armani suit jackets of the guests. It meant pretending she didn't see the stacks of bearer bonds sitting casually on the table next to the scotch glasses. "More scotch. Neat," a man grunted. Clara nodded, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Right away, sir." She moved toward the bar, navigating through the heavy mahogany furniture. Her instructions from the agency were clear. Be a ghost. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact with the man at the head of the table. That man was Dante Moretti. Even without looking at him, Clara could feel his gravity. He wasn't loud like the others. He sat in a high-backed leather chair, nursing a tumbler of amber liquid, watching the room with predatory stillness. He was younger than the rumors suggested, maybe early 30s, with sharp, aristocratic features and eyes the color of cold steel. Clara returned with the bottle. As she poured, the room was filled with the low hum of conversation, mostly about shipping routes and union bribes. Then it happened. A phone rang. It wasn't a smartphone. It was an old, battered Nokia sitting right next to Dante's hand. The ringtone was generic, but the effect was immediate. The conversation at the table died. Dante didn't move to answer it. He just stared at the device, his jaw tightening. The caller ID was blocked. "Boss," one of his lieutenants, a burly man named Rocco, whispered. "You want me to get that?" Dante shook his head slightly. "No one has this number." The phone kept ringing, drilling into the silence. Clara was standing right there, holding the silver tray. The ringing was piercing, annoying. It triggered a muscle memory she hadn't used in 10 years. Without thinking, purely on instinct, perhaps driven by the exhaustion of a double shift, she saw the phone vibrate toward the edge of the table. She reached out to catch it before it fell. Her thumb accidentally hit the green button. The voice on the other end barked, loud and frantic. "Ascolta, I spirisugnu ka, iamu a trapula." "Listen, the cops are here. We are walking into a trap." It was Sicilian, but not just standard Italian or even common Sicilian. It was Palermitano, a rough, rapid-fire street dialect specific to the old neighborhoods of Palermo. The room froze. The men looked at each other in confusion. They spoke Italian, sure, but the dialect was thick, garbled by static and panic. "What is he saying?" Rocco growled, looking at the phone in Clara's hand. Clara's brain short-circuited. She forgot she was a ghost. She forgot she was a temp. She just heard a warning that lives were in danger. "It's an ambush," Clara blurted out, her voice cutting through the smoke. She looked directly at Dante. He said the police are there. It's a trap. You need to cut the feed. Dante's eyes snapped to hers. The intensity of his gaze was like a physical blow. What did you say? He asked, his voice dangerously low. He's speaking Palermitano, Clara explained, her breath hitching as she realized what she had just done. He said, "The cops are here. We are walking into a trap. You need to hang up." Dante snatched the phone from her hand. He listened for a split second, heard the sirens in the background of the call, and crushed the end button. He slammed the phone onto the table and looked at Rocco. "Shut it down. The harbor deal. Now!" Dante roared. Chaos erupted. Men scrambled for their phones, shouting orders. Rocco was barking into his radio. In the confusion, Clara took a step back. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. What have I done? I spoke. I made eye contact. I translated Mafia code. She clutched her empty tray to her chest and began to back away, hoping the chaos would swallow her up. She reached the heavy oak doors, her hand trembling as she pushed one open. She could see the hallway. Freedom. The exit sign was just 20 feet away. She slipped through the door, turning to sprint toward the service elevator. "Hey!" A voice boomed from inside the room. Clara didn't stop. She hit the elevator button frantically. "Come on, come on!" The doors of the elevator slid open. She stepped in and pressed the lobby button. As the metal doors began to close, she saw a hand shoot out and stop them. It was Rocco. He looked breathless, his face red. "Going somewhere?" he sneered. My shift is over," Clara stammered, backing into the corner of the elevator. "I have to go home." Rocco stepped inside, his bulk filling the small space. He didn't hit a floor button. He just turned the key in the service panel, locking the elevator in place. "Shift's not over," Rocco said, crossing his massive arms. "Mr. Moretti wants to thank you personally." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. "I don't need thanks, really. I know languages, that's all." "Yeah," Rocco grunted. "That's the problem. A waitress who speaks the dialect of the old country. That ain't a skill you pick up on Duolingo, sweetheart." He pressed the button for the penthouse. The elevator didn't go down. It went up. The elevator ride was silent and terrifyingly short. When the doors opened, Clara wasn't in a hallway anymore. She was stepping directly into a sprawling penthouse suite that looked more like a fortress than a home. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering New York skyline, but Clara only saw bars, heavy velvet drapes, marble floors, and modern art that probably cost more than her entire life's earnings. "Sit," Rocco commanded, pointing to a solitary velvet armchair in the center of the room. Clara sat. She smoothed her cheap black uniform skirt, trying to stop her hands from shaking. She looked for exits. One main door, guarded by 2 men. The elevator, which required a key. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The silence was psychological torture. Finally, the double doors on the far side of the room opened. Dante Moretti walked in. He had removed his suit jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his white dress shirt, revealing tattoos on his forearms that looked like ancient script. He held a glass of water in one hand and a file folder in the other. He didn't look like a thug. He looked like a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, which, in a twisted way, he was. He walked over to Clara and extended the glass of water. "Drink," he said. It wasn't a request. Clara took the glass. Her teeth clattered against the rim as she took a sip. "Please, Mr. Moretti." "I won't say anything. I swear." Dante pulled a chair opposite her and sat down, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. He studied her face, as if she were a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "You saved me about $5 million tonight," Dante said calmly. and probably 6 of my men's lives. That call was from a shipment in New Jersey. If they had walked in while the feds were there, it would have been a bloodbath. "I'm glad I could help," Clara whispered. "Can I go now?" Dante ignored the question. He opened the file folder. Clara Sterling, age 24, born in Chicago, moved to New York 3 years ago. You work double shifts at Events Elite, and you live in a studio apartment in Queens that has 3 code violations. Clara stared at him. "How?" "I have resources," Dante said, flipping a page. "But here is what I don't see in this file, Clara. I don't see a semester abroad in Sicily. I don't see an Italian grandmother listed in your family tree. Your parents were listed as John and Mary Sterling. Americans." He closed the file with a sharp snap. "So tell me," Dante said, his voice dropping to a whisper that sent shivers down her spine. "How does a girl from Chicago understand a dialect spoken only in the back alleys of Palermo? A dialect used specifically by the Cosa Nostra to avoid wiretaps?" Clara swallowed hard. This was the secret she had kept buried since she was 14, the secret that had forced her to change her name. "I learned it from a neighbor," she lied. "An old man. He used to babysit me." Dante laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "A neighbor? You think I'm stupid?" He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "My enemies are everywhere, Clara. The Russians in Brighton Beach, the triads downtown. But the worst ones, they are the ones who look like friends, the ones who send spies dressed as waitresses." He turned back to her, his face hard. "You aren't leaving." Clara stood up, panic rising in her throat. "You can't keep me here. This is kidnapping." "This is protective custody," Dante corrected. "Until I find out who sent you, you stay here. If you are a spy, you won't leave this room alive. If you are innocent, well, we'll see." "I have a life!" Clara shouted, anger momentarily overriding her fear. "I have a cat to feed. I have rent to pay." Dante pulled a cell phone from his pocket. Her cell phone. He must have had Rocco take it from the locker room downstairs. "Your rent is paid for the next year. I had my assistant handle it 10 minutes ago. As for the cat, Rocco is picking it up now." Clara gaped at him. You paid my rent?" "I own you now, Clara," Dante said, walking toward the door. "At least until I figure out the truth." He paused at the doorway, his hand on the handle. He looked back at her, and for a second, the coldness in his eyes softened into something else. Curiosity? Admiration? "Make yourself comfortable. The guest bedroom is on the left. Don't try the windows. They are reinforced glass." "Wait!" Clara cried out. "Why didn't you just kill me if you think I'm a spy?" Dante looked her up and down, his gaze lingering for a moment too long. "Because spies usually don't have fear in their eyes when they save a crime boss," he said. "And because I haven't heard that dialect spoken with such perfection since my mother died." He walked out, and the heavy doors clicked locked behind him. Clara was alone, trapped in a golden cage with a man who was half monster, half prince. She rushed to the window and pressed her hand against the cold glass. She looked down at the streets, 40 stories below. She was safe from the police, safe from her debt collectors, but she was now the prisoner of Dante Moretti. And the worst part? As she replayed the way he looked at her, she realized that part of her, the dangerous, reckless part that resembled her real father, didn't want to run. She walked over to the bookshelf and saw a framed photo. It was Dante younger, standing next to a man Clara recognized instantly. Her blood ran cold. The man in the photo with Dante was Victor Hale, the man who had killed her father. Clara gasped, covering her mouth. This wasn't just a cage. This was ground zero. She hadn't just walked into a mafia boss's house. She had walked into the center of the war that destroyed her family. She needed to get out. Or she needed to stay and finish what her father started. Clara spent the first hour pacing the room, checking every inch of the penthouse for a weakness. There was none. The windows were sealed tight, the balcony door was locked, and the service elevator required a biometric scan. She was trapped in a multi-million-dollar aquarium. A soft buzz at the door made her jump. It wasn't Dante, it was Rocco. He walked in holding a plastic carrier crate. "Here," Rocco grunted, setting the crate on the marble floor. "Your cat." "Name's Pickles. Seriously?" "He has anxiety," Clara snapped, rushing to the crate. She opened the door, and a scruffy orange tabby shot out, immediately running under the velvet sofa. "And thank you." "Don't thank me. Boss's orders. He said if the cat starves, you'll be annoying." Rocco straightened his tie. "Dinner is at 8, in the dining room. Dress nice. You find something in the closet." Rocco left. Clara stood there, fuming. Dress nice? Was she a prisoner or a date? She walked into the guest room closet and gasped. It was filled with clothes. Not just any clothes. Designer gowns, silk blouses, cashmere sweaters. They were all in her size. It was creepy, efficient, and undeniably impressive. She chose a simple navy blue dress that looked professional but modest. She wasn't going to give Dante the satisfaction of seeing her in something revealing. At 8:00 p.m. sharp, she walked into the dining room. The table was long enough to seat 20 people, but it was set for 2. Dante was already there, scrolling through a tablet. He stood up when she entered. "You look decent," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite him. "You look tired," Clara shot back, sitting down. Dante's lip quirked upward, a almost smile. "Running an empire is exhausting work, Clara, especially when people try to blow up your shipments." Servers brought out plates of ossobuco. The smell was heavenly, reminding Clara she hadn't eaten since lunch. "So," Dante began, cutting into his meat with surgical precision, "let's play a game. It's called Truth or Consequence. I'm not playing games with you," Clara said, clutching her napkin. "You are," Dante said, his voice dropping an octave. "Because if you lie, Rocco throws Pickles off the balcony." Clara's eyes went wide. "I'm joking," Dante said, taking a sip of wine. "Rocco loves cats, but seriously, I need to know who you are. No more lies about neighbors." Clara took a deep breath. She had to give him something close to the truth without revealing her identity. Her real name wasn't Sterling, it was Rossi. Her father was Carlo Rossi, a bookkeeper for the mob who was executed 10 years ago for allegedly stealing money. But he hadn't stolen it. Victor Hale had framed him. "My father was involved," Clara said slowly. "He worked for people like you, in Chicago." Dante stopped eating. "Which family?" "The Gallows," she lied. It was a safe lie. The Gallows were wiped out years ago. "Low level. Accountant," she said. "He taught me the dialect because he said it was the only way to know when people were talking about killing you." Dante studied her. He seemed to weigh every syllable. "And where is he now?" "Dead," Clara said, the pain in her voice genuine. "A business dispute." Dante nodded slowly. "I'm sorry. This life, it eats people, especially the ones who are just trying to survive on the edges." For the first time, Clara saw a flicker of humanity in him. He wasn't just a brute. He was a man who understood loss. "Why do you have a picture of Victor Hale?" Clara asked, unable to stop herself. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Dante's knife scraped harshly against the china plate. "Victor Hale is a business partner," Dante said, his voice cold. "For now." "He looks like a shark," Clara muttered. He is worse than a shark, Dante said, looking her dead in the eye. A shark kills because it's hungry. Hale kills because he enjoys it. He is coming here tomorrow for a meeting, and that is why I need you. Clara froze. What? Hale is the one who set the trap at the docks today, Dante revealed. I can't prove it, but I know it. He wants my territory in Brooklyn. Tomorrow, he is coming to apologize for the confusion. Dante leaned forward. He speaks the dialect too, Clara. But he speaks a variation from the western side of the island. I understand about 60% of it. I need you to listen. You want me to translate for you? Clara asked, incredulous. I'm a server. I pour wine. Tomorrow, you are my personal assistant, Dante decided. You will stand in the corner, you will serve coffee, and you will listen to every word he whispers to his bodyguards. If you do this, I will give you $50,000 and a plane ticket to anywhere in the world. Clara's heart raced. $50,000. That was freedom. That was a new life. But it also meant being in the same room as the man who killed her father. And if I refuse, then you stay in this apartment until I deem you are no longer a security risk, Dante said, which could take years. Clara looked at her wine glass. She thought about her father. She thought about revenge. If she was in the room, maybe she could find out something that would destroy Hale. I'll do it, she said, but I want the money in cash before the meeting starts. Dante smiled. It was a dangerous, wolfish smile. Deal. Suddenly, the lights in the penthouse flickered. The music system cut out. Dante was on his feet instantly, a gun appearing in his hand, as if by magic. Get down, he ordered. What's happening? Clara asked, confused. The power grid for the building just went offline, Dante hissed, moving toward her. That doesn't happen by accident. Boom! The heavy oak doors of the penthouse blew inward, splintering into 1,000 pieces. The explosion threw Clara backward over her chair. She hit the floor hard, her ears ringing. Dust and smoke billowed into the dining room. She coughed, waving her hands in front of her face. Dante! Stay down! Dante's voice roared from somewhere in the smoke. Gunfire erupted. Pop, 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 pop. It was coming from the hallway. Men in tactical gear were swarming through the ruined doorway. They weren't police. They wore black masks and moved with military precision. Dante flipped the heavy dining table onto its side, creating a barricade. He grabbed Clara by the arm and hauled her behind it. Who are they? Clara screamed over the noise of bullets chipping away at the mahogany table. Cleaners! Dante grunted, checking the magazine of his pistol. Hale isn't waiting for the meeting tomorrow. He's making his move tonight. Rocco appeared from the kitchen, dual-wielding pistols like an action movie hero, firing blindly into the smoke to suppress the attackers. Boss, the elevator is cut, Rocco shouted. We're boxed in. The balcony! Dante yelled back. Are you crazy? Clara shrieked. We're on the 40th floor. We have emergency rappel lines on the terrace, Dante said, grabbing her hand. His grip was iron. Do you trust me? No, Clara yelled. Good. Trust keeps you alive. Run! They broke cover. Bullets whizzed past them, shattering the expensive vases and shredding the art on the walls. Clara felt the wind of a bullet pass inches from her ear. She scrambled over the debris, her heels slipping on the polished floor. She kicked them off and ran barefoot. They burst out onto the terrace. The cold night air hit them. The wind was howling. Dante ran to a hidden panel in the wall and ripped it open, revealing 2 coils of black rope attached to harnesses. Put this on, he commanded, tossing one to her. Clara fumbled with the buckles, her hands shaking so badly she could barely close them. I can't do this. I can't. Inside the apartment, the gunfire stopped. That was bad. It meant the attackers had cleared Rocco and were coming for them. Clara, look at me. Dante grabbed her face with both hands. His eyes were wild but focused. "If they find you, they will kill you just for being here. Put it on." She snapped the buckle shut. Dante clipped her line to the railing. "Jump, count to 3, pull the lever." "What about you? I'm right behind you. Go!" The glass doors to the balcony shattered as the attackers breached the terrace. Clara didn't think. She squeezed her eyes shut and vaulted over the railing. For a second, there was only weightlessness. The wind roared in her ears. She plummeted toward the streetlights below. 1, 2, 3. She yanked the lever. The rope went taut with a bone-jarring jerk, slowing her descent rapidly. She swung toward the side of the building, bracing her legs against the glass. She looked up. Dante was sliding down the rope next to her, firing his gun back up at the balcony with one hand while controlling his descent with the other. They hit the ground in an alleyway behind the building. Clara's knees buckled and she collapsed onto the wet pavement. Dante unclipped her harness in one fluid motion. "Up! We have to keep moving!" "Rocco!" Clara gasped. "Is he—" "Rocco knew the job," Dante said, his face a mask of grim determination. But Clara saw the muscle in his jaw twitch. He was hurting. He pulled her to her feet. "My car is in a private garage 2 blocks over. We need to get off the grid." "Wait!" Clara stopped, patting her pockets. "Pickles! My cat!" Dante stopped. He looked at her like she was insane. "Clara, we just jumped off a building. We are being hunted by a cartel." "I am not leaving him," Clara yelled, tears streaming down her face. "Everyone I love leaves or dies. I am not leaving the cat." Dante stared at her. He looked at the burning penthouse 40 stories up. Then he reached into his jacket pocket. A small, terrified orange head poked out. "I grabbed him when I flipped the table," Dante muttered, looking embarrassed. "He bit me." Clara let out a sob of relief and reached for the kitten, tucking him into her own dress against her chest. You saved him." "His leverage," Dante grumbled, turning away to hide his face. "Let's go." They ran through the dark alleyways of New York. Clara was barefoot, covered in dust, clutching a kitten, running alongside the most dangerous man in the city. They reached a nondescript parking garage. Dante went to a dusty grey sedan, not a Ferrari, not a limo, but a boring Honda Civic. "A Honda?" Clara asked, panting. "The Ferrari has a GPS tracker," Dante explained, hot-wiring the car in under 10 seconds. "This is a ghost car." They sped out of the garage, blending into the late-night traffic. Dante drove with one hand on the wheel, his eyes constantly checking the mirrors. "Where are we going?" Clara asked, her adrenaline starting to fade, replaced by a deep, aching exhaustion. "Safe house," Dante said. "Upstate, no internet, no cell service, just us." He glanced over at her. She looked like a wreck, hair wild, dress torn, dirt on her cheek. "You did good back there," he said quietly. Clara stroked the cat's head. "You saved my life." "I told you," Dante said, his voice softening. "Don't let her leave." "I meant it." Clara looked out the window. The city was fading behind them. She was safe, for now. But as the adrenaline wore off, a new realization hit her. Victor Hale had attacked tonight. That meant he knew Dante was vulnerable, or he knew someone was in the apartment. "Dante," Clara said slowly, "how did Hale know we were in the dining room? We were sitting in the dark until the lights went out." Dante's eyes narrowed in the rearview mirror. "Good question." "The phone," Clara whispered. "The burner phone you took from the table at the club, the one I answered." "I destroyed it," Dante said. "Did you take the battery out?" Dante was silent. "Did you?" Clara pressed. "I smashed it." "But the SIM card." Dante slammed his hand on the steering wheel. "A locator chip. If it was a trap from the beginning, the phone wasn't just to deliver a message, it was a beacon. He tracked us to the penthouse because you brought the phone home, Clara realized. I led them right to us, Dante said, his voice full of self-loathing. No, Clara said, reaching out and, for the first time, touching his arm. His muscles were tense, hard as rock. We led them. If I hadn't answered it, you wouldn't have taken it. Dante looked at her hand on his arm. Then he looked at her eyes. The intensity between them was suddenly suffocating. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was shared survival. Get some sleep, Clara, Dante whispered. It's going to be a long night. As Clara leaned back, closing her eyes, she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't just a translator anymore. She was a partner, and she was starting to fall for the king of the underworld. But she still hadn't told him her real name, and when he found out she was the daughter of the man his family executed, this car ride wouldn't end with a kiss, it would end with a bullet. The safe house was a misnomer. It was a hunting cabin deep in the Catskill Mountains, surrounded by miles of dense pine forest and silence so heavy it felt like a physical weight. The Honda Civic crunched over the gravel driveway and came to a halt. It was 3 a.m. We're here, Dante said, his voice raspy. Clara uncurled herself from the passenger seat. She was stiff, cold, and exhausted. Pickles the cat was asleep in her lap, blissfully unaware that he was currently a fugitive. Dante got out and unlocked the cabin door. Inside, the air was stale and freezing. He immediately went to the fireplace, stacking logs with efficient, practiced movements. Within minutes, a fire was roaring, casting long, dancing shadows against the rough timber walls. There's a generator out back, but we won't use it, Dante said, shedding his ruined dress shirt. Noise carries. Clara gasped. In the firelight, she saw his back. It was a map of violence. Old scars, white and jagged, crisscrossed his skin. But there was a new wound, a deep gash on his shoulder, oozing blood. You're hurt, Clara said, setting the cat down on a rug and rushing to him. Glass from the window. Dante dismissed it, grabbing a bottle of whiskey from a cabinet. It's fine. It's not fine. It needs stitches, or at least to be cleaned. Clara grabbed the whiskey bottle from his hand. Sit down. Dante looked at her, surprised by her tone. He sat on the edge of the dusty sofa. Clara found a first aid kit under the sink. Clearly this place was stocked for emergencies. She returned to him, soaking a cloth in whiskey. This is going to sting, she warned. Dante didn't flinch as she pressed the alcohol-soaked cloth to the open wound. He just watched her face. You have good hands, he murmured. Steady. My father. He used to come home hurt a lot, Clara said quietly, concentrating on cleaning the cut. We couldn't go to hospitals. Questions would be asked, so I learned to patch him up. Dante hissed a breath through his teeth as she applied a butterfly bandage. Your father sounds like a complicated man. He was, Clara said. She paused, her hand resting on his shoulder. The skin was warm. He told me the Mafia had honor, that they protected their own. That was a long time ago, Dante said, his voice heavy with regret. Now, it's just business, profit margins and body counts. He turned his head, catching her eyes. The distance between them had vanished. In the small, fire-lit room, stripped of his suits and his guards, Dante Moretti wasn't a kingpin. He was just a man. A tired, wounded man. Why didn't you leave me? Dante asked softly. In the alley. You could have run. I wouldn't have chased you. You went back for my cat, Clara whispered. Dante let out a low chuckle. That's it? I save your life, give you 50 grand. But the cat is what convinces you. It showed me who you really are, Clara said. She moved her hand from his shoulder to his cheek. His stubble was rough against her palm. "You aren't Victor Hale. You don't kill because you like it." Dante leaned into her touch. "Clara, you don't know me. If you knew the things I've done—" "I don't care," she said, and she meant it. The adrenaline, the fear, the intimacy of survival, it had all boiled over. Dante stood up, towering over her. He reached out and tangled his hand in her hair, pulling her face gently toward his. "I can't promise you safety," he breathed, his eyes searching hers. "But I promise you this. As long as I'm breathing, no one touches you." He kissed her. It wasn't a gentle, movie star kiss. It was desperate. It tasted of whiskey and smoke. It was a claiming. Clara wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer, needing to feel that they were both still alive. The fire crackled, the only sound in the room, as the lines between captive and captor, boss and server, blurred into nothing. For tonight, there were no lies. There was only the heat of the fire and the man who had saved her. But as Clara fell asleep in his arms on the narrow cabin bed later that night, guilt gnawed at her stomach. She had told him part of the truth, but she hadn't told him the name. Rossi. If Dante knew she was the daughter of the man his family branded a traitor, he wouldn't be holding her. He would be holding a gun. Morning sunlight filtered through the dirty windows, harsh and unforgiving. Clara woke up alone. The space in the bed beside her was cold. Panic flared instantly. Had he left her? Had the cleaners found them? "Dante!" she called out, sitting up and pulling the blanket around herself. No answer. She got up, her bare feet cold on the wood floor. She walked into the main room. Dante was standing by the table near the window. He was fully dressed in fresh clothes he must have found in the cabin supply chest, jeans and a black thermal shirt. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at something in his hand. Clara's heart stopped. It was her locket. She had taken it off last night before everything happened, placing it on the nightstand. She never took it off. It was an antique silver oval, and it was open. "Dante," she whispered, her voice trembling. Dante turned around slowly. The warmth from the night before was gone. His face was a mask of granite. His eyes were arctic. He held up the locket. Inside was a tiny, faded photograph of a smiling man holding a baby. "I know this face," Dante said. His voice was terrifyingly calm. "I was 18 when my father ordered the hit. I was the one who drove the car." Clara couldn't breathe. The room spun. "Carlo Rossi," Dante said the name like a curse. "The bookkeeper who stole $2 million from the Moretti family and sold our roats to the Irish mob." "He didn't steal it!" Clara screamed, the truth finally bursting out of her. "He didn't steal a dime! He was framed!" "Don't lie to me!" Dante roared, slamming his fist onto the table. The wood cracked. Pickles the cat bolted under the sofa. Dante marched toward her, stopping inches away. He radiated menace. "You aren't Clara Sterling. You are Clara Rossi. You didn't just happen to answer that phone. You didn't just happen to work at my club. This was a setup." "No," Clara pleaded, grabbing his arm. He shook her off violently. "I trusted you," Dante spat. "I let you into my house. I let you into my bed. And the whole time, you were planning what? To put a knife in my back while I slept?" "I didn't know it was you," Clara cried, tears streaming down her face. "I swear, Dante, I took the job because I needed money. When I saw you, when I saw the life, I wanted to hate you. I wanted to find proof that you killed him so I could go to the police. But I didn't plan the ambush." "Liar." Dante pulled his gun from his waistband. He didn't point it at her, but he held it at his side. A clear threat. My father died begging for his life, Clara sobbed. He told me Victor Hale cooked the books. Hale stole the money and pinned it on my dad because my dad found out about Hale's side deals. My father was loyal to your family. Dante froze. Hale. Yes, Hale, Clara shouted. Why do you think Hale is trying to kill you now? Because he does this. He betrays people. He framed my father 10 years ago, and now he's trying to take you out. Dante stared at her, his chest heaving. Doubt flickered in his eyes. The timeline fit. Hale had risen to power right after the missing money scandal. Hale was the one who found the evidence against Rossi. Give me one reason why I shouldn't put a bullet in you right now, Dante whispered. You are the daughter of a traitor. Because I saved your life, Clara said, wiping her eyes, standing tall. And because you know I'm telling the truth. You saw the way Hale looked at you at the club. You know he's a snake. Dante looked at the locket in his hand, then back at Clara. The silence stretched, agonizing and thin. Suddenly, a sound cut through the air. Snap! It was the sound of a twig breaking outside. Dante's head snapped toward the window. His instincts overrode his anger instantly. He moved to the wall, peeking through a crack in the blinds. Get down, he whispered. What is it? Clara asked. Black SUVs, 3 of them, coming up the drive. Dante turned to her, his face pale. They found us. How? Clara asked. We took the ghost car. Dante looked at Clara's dress, discarded on the chair. Your cat's collar. Clara looked at Pickles, who was peeking out from under the sofa. He had a shiny new collar with a digital tag. It's an air tag, Clara whispered in horror. I put it on him last week because he keeps running away. GPS, Dante cursed. They tracked the cat. He racked the slide of his pistol. We have to run, Clara said. No, Dante said, his eyes locking onto hers. There are too many of them. If we run, we get cut down in the open. He grabbed a heavy hunting rifle from the wall mount and tossed it to Clara. Do you know how to use this? Clara caught it, the weight heavy in her hands. My father taught me. Good, Dante said. He moved the sofa to block the door. Because we aren't running. We're going to kill them all. He looked at her one last time. The hatred was gone, replaced by a grim acceptance. If we survive this, Clara, we settle the debt of your father. But first, we deal with Hale. Hale is here. The lead car, Dante said, peering out. He wants to watch me die personally. Clara gripped the rifle. The man who killed her father was outside. The man she loved was beside her. Let him come, Clara said, her voice turning cold. I have a message for him in Italian. The first bullet didn't break a window. It punched through the front door, sending a spray of splinters into the room. Get down! Dante shouted, shoving Clara behind the heavy oak sofa they had overturned. The cabin erupted into chaos. It wasn't a tactical assault anymore. It was a barrage. The sound was deafening. The continuous crack, crack, crack of automatic rifles, tearing the wooden walls apart. Glass shattered, vases exploded, and dust filled the air like a thick fog. Clara clutched the hunting rifle to her chest, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked at Dante. He was calm. Terrifyingly calm. He was counting. 3, 2, 1. Reload, he whispered. In the lull of the gunfire outside, as the attackers swapped magazines, Dante popped up. He fired 3 shots from his handgun through the window. 2 screams echoed from the driveway. He ducked back down. 2 down, 6 to go, plus Hale. They're going to rush us, Clara said, her voice shaking but her grip on the rifle firm. They know we're alone. They think we're alone, Dante corrected. They don't know who you are. He looked at her, his eyes intense. Clara, listen to me. They are going to breach the front door. I will take the left. You take the right. Don't hesitate. If they come through that door, they aren't here to talk." "I know," Clara said. She thought of her father. She thought of the years of poverty, the fear, the shame of being the daughter of a traitor, all caused by the man standing on the front lawn. "Ready?" Dante asked. "Ready." The firing stopped completely. A heavy silence fell over the forest. "Moretti!" A voice boomed from outside. It was smooth, arrogant, and sickeningly familiar. "Victor Hale. I know you're in there, Dante," Hale shouted. "Come out, let's make this dignified. You sign over the Brooklyn territories, and I'll let you walk away. I'll even let the girl go." Dante looked at Clara and shook his head slightly. "Liar." "You know I can't do that, Victor," Dante shouted back, his voice projecting clearly. "And you know you're not letting anyone leave." "True," Hale laughed. "Loose ends, right? Just like Carlo Rossi. Remember him? The little bookkeeper who found out I was skimming off the top? I handled him, and now I'll handle his daughter." Clara gasped. Dante's eyes widened. There it was. The confession. Hale hadn't just admitted to killing her father. He had admitted to the theft. He had cleared Carlo Rossi's name in front of the only man who mattered. Dante looked at Clara. There was no anger left in his face, only a profound apology. He nodded at her. "We finish this." "Breach!" Hale screamed. The front door didn't just open, it was kicked off its hinges. 2 men in black tactical gear stormed in. Clara didn't think. She didn't feel fear. She felt recoil. She raised the hunting rifle and fired. The kickback bruised her shoulder, but her aim was true. The man on the right crumpled. Dante dropped the man on the left with 2 precise shots to the chest. "Move!" Dante yelled. They scrambled back toward the kitchen as bullets chewed up the floor where they had just been sitting. They were backed into a corner. The kitchen island was their last cover. "I'm out!" Dante cursed, ejecting his magazine. He reached for a spare, but his pockets were empty. He had used his last rounds. He looked at Clara. She had 1 bolt-action round left in the rifle. They were trapped. Victor Hale walked through the ruined front door. He wasn't wearing tactical gear. He was wearing a pristine grey suit, stepping over the bodies of his own men with a look of distaste. He held a gold-plated pistol. 2 more guards flanked him. "Well," Hale said, smiling as he saw Dante unarmed behind the counter. "That was spirited." He raised his gun, pointing it directly at Dante's head. "Any last words, Capo?" Hale sneered. Dante stood up slowly, placing his hands on the counter. He moved to shield Clara with his body. "Yeah," Dante said. "You should have checked the books better." Hale laughed. "The books? You're dying and you're talking about accounting?" "No," Clara said. She stepped out from behind Dante. Hale looked at her, surprised. The waitress, or should I say, the orphan. Clara stared him down. She didn't raise the rifle. She knew she couldn't cycle the bolt fast enough to kill 3 men. She needed to buy 1 second of distraction. She looked Hale in the eye and spoke, not in English, not in standard Italian. She spoke in the specific, rare dialect of Hale's home village in western Sicily, the one Dante had told her he barely understood. "Tusina vestia senza onuri, uto sangue è avvelenato e a to matri si vergogna di tia." You are a beast without honor. Your blood is poisoned, and your mother is ashamed of you. Hale froze. The shock was visceral. To hear the dialect of his childhood, the language of his grandmother, spoken by this American girl in the middle of a gunfight. It short-circuited his brain. For a split second, his gun lowered. He blinked, confused by the ghost of his past. That split second was all Dante needed. Dante didn't need a gun. He grabbed a heavy butcher knife from the wooden block on the counter and threw it with the speed of a striking cobra. The blade buried itself deep in Hale's chest. Hale gasped, dropping his gun, his eyes wide with shock. The two guards turned to fire at Dante, but Clara was already moving. She racked the bolt of the rifle and fired her last shot from the hip. It hit the propane tank of the stove next to the guards. Hiss! "Down!" Clara screamed, tackling Dante. One of the guards, panicked, fired his weapon. The spark hit the gas. Boom! The kitchen explosion blew the back wall of the cabin out. The force threw the guards backward into the yard. Silence returned. Clara coughed, waving smoke away from her face. She was covered in drywall dust, her ears ringing. She looked up. Dante was alive. He was pushing debris off his legs. He crawled over to her, checking her frantically. "Clara? Clara?" "I'm okay," she choked out. They stood up, stumbling over the wreckage. Victor Hale was lying on the floor, gasping for air. The knife was fatal. He looked up at Clara, blood bubbling on his lips. "How?" Hale wheezed. "How did you know?" Clara stood over him. She looked like an avenging angel. "I'm a translator," she said, cold and clear. "I translate trash like you into the past tense." Hale's eyes glazed over. He was gone. Dante walked over to her. He didn't look at the body. He looked at her. He reached out and took her hand, his fingers interlacing with hers. His grip was so tight it almost hurt. "Carlo Rossi," Dante said, his voice rough with emotion. "He was a good man, and I killed him. I can never take that back, Clara. I can never fix it." Clara looked at the man who had ordered her father's death, and the man who had just saved her life. She saw the guilt that would haunt him forever, but she also saw the love. "You can't fix the past, Dante," she whispered, squeezing his hand, "but you can pay the debt." "Name your price," Dante said immediately. "Anything. Money, power, the city. It's yours." Clara looked around the ruined cabin. She saw Pickles the cat, miraculously unharmed, sitting on top of the refrigerator, cleaning his paw. She looked back at Dante. "I don't want the city," she said. "I just want to go home. With you." Dante exhaled, a sound like a weight being lifted from his soul. He pulled her into his chest, burying his face in her hair. "Let's go home." The Obsidian Club was busier than ever. The music was thumping, the champagne was flowing, and the elite of New York were partying as if tomorrow would never come. In the VIP section, the Red Room was occupied. Dante Moretti sat at the head of the table. He looked different. The darkness that used to cling to him had lifted. He was laughing at something Rocco said. The heavy oak doors opened. The room went silent. Clara walked in. She wasn't wearing a server's uniform. She was wearing a floor-length emerald gown that hugged every curve, diamonds glittering at her throat, diamonds that were a gift from the Moretti family vault. She didn't carry a tray. She carried herself like a queen. She walked to the head of the table. Rocco and the other lieutenants stood up instantly out of respect. Clara placed a hand on Dante's shoulder. He looked up at her, and the look of adoration on his face made the other men look away. "Telephone, Mr. Moretti," she said, holding out a sleek, encrypted smartphone. "It's the Italians. They want to renegotiate the olive oil shipment." Dante didn't take the phone. He took her hand and kissed her knuckles. "Tell them to wait," Dante said. "I'm busy." "They say it's urgent," Clara teased, leaning down, her lips brushing his ear. "They're speaking Palermitano." Dante smirked. "Then handle it, Mrs. Moretti. You speak it better than I do." Clara smiled and took the seat next to him, the seat of the partner, the equal. As she put the phone to her ear and began to speak fluent, rapid-fire Sicilian, commanding the respect of a crime lord across the ocean, Dante watched her. Rocco leaned in. "Boss, the car is ready. You want to leave?" Dante looked at his wife. He watched the way the light caught her hair, the way she commanded the room, the way she had turned his empire of fear into a kingdom of loyalty. He shook his head. "No," Dante said, echoing the words he had spoken the night they met, but with a completely different meaning. "Don't let her leave," he whispered to himself. "Never let her leave." Clara hung up the phone and looked at him. She knew exactly what he was thinking. "I'm not going anywhere, Dante," she said. And for the first time in the history of the Moretti family, the boss didn't have to watch his back, because she was watching it for him. And that is the story of Clara and Dante. From a terrifying mistake to a love that conquered the underworld, Clara proved that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun, it's a voice. She faced the man who destroyed her family and found forgiveness in the arms of the man who saved her future. It makes you wonder, could you forgive the person who hurt your family if you knew they were just a pawn in a bigger game? Or is some history too bloody to wash away? I want to know what you would have done in Clara's shoes. Would you have run from the cabin when you had the chance? Or would you have stayed to fight? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of romance, danger, and Italian mafia secrets, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter.